Hey, everyone. Happy Monday. I am here doing virtual water cooler live video. So if you're over there on Twitter watching this because of Periscope, jump on over. Well, sign into Periscope or jump over to YouTube so that you can ask me and Lyndon questions. This is so totally fun. Lyndon and I have been chatting backstage in the broadcast studio before coming on for virtual water cooler this Monday morning. We've been hanging out on Twitter for some time, and this is our first conversation. Good to see you, Lyndon.
It's good to see you too. Thank you.
I was going to wear my Toronto Maple Leafs ball cap so I don't like futz with my hair on the. I thought you would have appreciated that being up in Toronto.
Yeah, no, it's weird not having hockey right now. Although we're almost postseason, so this time of year we don't normally have hockey this time of year in Toronto either. So.
Oh yeah, but I know. Oh, no hockey season. Don't even get me started. But let's talk about where this all started. You are the founder of the Comms Bar up there in Toronto. You come from the PR agency world. You have a little bit of an accent, so you had a little tour over to Canada. So yep. Talk to me. How did Comms Bar and your career, and how did it start?
Well, so my career started as a journalist. I was a broadcast journalist for the first 8 or 9 years of my life, working in local news, and then got the opportunity as the market changed in the UK, as technology kind of became a bigger part of newsrooms, which kind of ages me a little bit. But the opportunity came to go into communications because the radio market was changing. And so I took it thinking it would be 6 months, and it's been 20-something years now. And I worked in-house initially, but then got the chance to go and work in an agency. And it was an agency that typically worked with early stage or small businesses. And I just found that the combination was infectious. It was working with people that believed they could change the world. And we were trying to be a part of that and helping them to bring their dreams to life. And so the last 15 years in the UK, I spent in agencies, working in kind of small, mid-sized agencies, working with that kind of type of customer. But when I came to Canada 10 years ago, I was asked by an existing agency customer if they could keep working with me alongside the agency that I'd just left, because they were getting value from some of the things that I was giving them, which they weren't technically paying for. And that just kind of triggered an idea that there were lots of businesses that were not really clear on why they were doing PR or how to get the most out of it. And so then it started a journey to try and figure out, if we were rebuilding kind of public relations from the ground up, what would it look like? And so part of that was changing, how people understand PR and marketing, the relationship between the two, the difference between PR and publicity. And Comms Bar was really a way to make it accessible, where rather than paying a retainer fee every month and getting a predetermined set of services, you could actually walk in when you needed help and get help solving business problems using communications disciplines. And so that's Comms Bar, and it's been a combination of digital and physical. We've got a walk-in clinic that normally is open every day inside. There's a Staples studio in Toronto. It was the first in the city, which is a shared workspace, and it gave us that literally the ability for people to walk in through a front door in downtown Toronto and get help when they needed it. So that's kind of where it started and where we are now.
Oh, so amazing. So for anyone watching, we are chatting PR, publicity, marketing for entrepreneurs in small business. I'm Kelly Hoey. I'm the author of the book, Build Your Dream Network. And this is Lyndon Johnson, who is the founder of the Comms Bar up in Toronto. And our conversations on Twitter have led to us having a good load of banter, because there's a lot of good faith and good money that early stage companies put into PR that, if anyone's watched me, I have like a bone to pick on it because of the amount of money. And as I shared with Lyndon, one time a startup who was with no revenue model, fundraising, when I told them how they should approach their PR and marketing, said, "Thank you. You've just saved me $125,000, Kelly." True story. So let's talk. We could delve into what's wrong with the model for hours. So let's not do that. Let's go back to that client who set off the light bulb moment for you. And you said, this is a problem I can solve, and started your entrepreneurial journey. Let's talk about what you were doing and the framework you were providing for that client, because that's comms bar, and that's something we can get to people's hands today.
Yeah, well, so the issue really was that they were getting media coverage, but after they had the coverage, quantifying the value was difficult. And so part of what I was doing was helping to figure out how they used it to build relationships with a range of different people, whether it was customers, prospects, potential investors, stakeholders, employees in some cases. And so that's really what they wanted, was the kind of creative input into what more they could do. They kind of got coverage as an output of having worked with the agency, but then how do they use it to get more value? And one of the things that we focused on was about building relationships that they own, because when you pay an agency to talk to journalists on your behalf, the journalist relationship is owned really by the PR company. And of course, if you stop paying the money, then you lose that relationship because you lose the intermediary. And if you try and do that in your personal lives, it sounds crazy that you rely on somebody else to negotiate with your friends, to do things to help you. And so really what we tried to do was to put that into a framework where relationships were at the very core of it, and then use them in context depending on what the business outcome was, and then try to figure out how creatively we use all of the different things, whether it's media coverage, whether it's content, whether it's actually picking up the phone and talking to people, video online, all of the things that we now have available to us, with the sole purpose of building and strengthening a relationship so that it becomes something that has value to the organization.
It's like, you're just singing my tune, Lyndon. You know this. And there's Molly. Oh my God. There we go. Our mutual friend. Yay. Hi, Molly.
Yay.
Yeah, one of the things I've always talked about is the benefit of the world we live in right now is, and this was before, I'm going to just benefit generally of the internet world, is it democratized access. And if you were the kind of decent human being and you showed up with like a clear reason of what is value add to both sides, you can have direct access to people. Now, there's sometimes, that's sort of a broad assumption. Some people may be like, no, I'm only going to come through a trusted gatekeeper. And that's when you want to hire the trusted gatekeeper to get you those relationships. But this is like so important. It's like, what's your goal? What are the relationships you need to make that goal happen? And then how individually do you connect with those individuals?
Yeah. And if you don't understand that, it's impossible really to build a strategy to build and strengthen the relationships and then ultimately to be able to use them. And that's the thing that I think gets misunderstood a lot about PR. People think it's about media pitching and media coverage. And I've always said that's publicity. Getting the coverage as the outcome is a publicist's job. Building a network and building a network intentionally and strengthening those relationships is public relations. And most people do that. If you're an entrepreneur anyway, most people do that as part of building the business. You can't really build a business without doing it. It's just what we've tried to do is give entrepreneurs the skills, to give them the tools to be able to match with the skills they already have, to be able to do it in a structured way and document it, and to be able to look at it and actually see the things that are obvious and the things that, they may be missing just by going out and talking to everybody using an email blast or using media coverage, because building relationships is personal. It's the nature of that connection between people and finding the mutual benefit. And if you treat everybody as one audience and you only talk about the benefit to you, you lose a lot of the value that you would get if you tried to do it differently.
That's like so awesome. And I'm thinking too of a friend who's started her career in PR and is now a CEO. She's always approached PR as an operational matter, as in the sense of how do we operate on a daily basis to build these relationships and these connections, which is to put sort of the crisis PR in another corner, because that's a different skill set and beast. Publicity, this is interesting. I sort of like, oh, okay, so what do we want publicity on, and who wants that publicity? What you want is to be that ongoing relationship. Can you walk us through the framework?
Yeah, so the framework started as an internal system. So part of Comms Bar was that we work with specialists that all have different discipline experience. And so the person that an entrepreneur might start a conversation with may not be the best person to help them solve their particular challenge. And so we developed a way that we could pass a snapshot of an entrepreneur's business and the challenge that they were faced between the specialists in the bar. Some are physically located and some are virtually located. And so we needed a way to be able to do it efficiently, so that if we were passing an entrepreneur, a customer across to somebody else, we could give the person that they're going to be dealing with that snapshot. We've all been in the situation where we phone a utility or a cell phone company and you have to explain the same situation 3 or 4 times. It takes time. It's frustrating. It just shows that we're not really, the company may not be necessarily concerned about, helping you quickly. And so we wanted to try and get around that. And so we developed something initially for that purpose. The other thing was about understanding where a business was really quickly. And by gathering certain bits of information, we could see that there were disconnects or things that looked like they were problematic. And we can actually focus on understanding those things in more detail. And so from that, we realized that having a customer come in and see us, we could use these same tools for them leaving the bar and being able to do as much of the work themselves. And operationalizing what they were doing, making it part of their business strategy, not just a communication strategy. And so right now it's 12 canvases. There are canvases that gather specific information depending on what you're trying to achieve. Are you trying to identify who the key relationships are? Are you trying to build or strengthen a relationship and what the context of that is? Are you trying to activate a relationship? I was talking about marketing being about getting people to take actions, and you have to be able to get them to do something. And if the relationship isn't strong enough to compel them to do it, or they're not capable because the job role that they have doesn't allow them to actually take the action, trying to get them to do it is pointless. But journalists are a different relationship and they require different things, and building them is done in a different way to building relationships with investors. So we built a framework that has canvases for each part of the communications domain, but also relates specifically to achieving a particular kind of outcome in the business. And they're relatively easy to fill in. If you've filled in Alex Osterwalder's business model canvas, it's no more complicated than that. And we've got quick start guides for all of them, which take people through it step by step or cell by cell. But it gives us a snapshot of information, or gives the entrepreneur a snapshot of information from which they can build a hypothesis and then test them. Because what we wanted to try and do was enable them to build a strategy based on evidence rather than building a strategy based on assumption, which if you build it on assumption and you get to the end and you do a whole load of things because you think it's going to work, if it doesn't, then you have to start over again. And so the framework was really designed to do those kind of key things, organize information to enable entrepreneurs to build and test hypotheses, and also to build a strategy based on evidence to know where they really are, rather than just basing it on what they think the current position is or what they need to do.
Or what worked for somebody else.
Or what worked for somebody else, exactly. Because so much of what you hear these days is, well, I did this, and so you should do it. And it's like, okay, but unless you're starting in exactly the same position, you're working with all of the same variables, all of the same people, and you want the outcome to be exactly the same, there's a reasonable chance to think it's not going to work exactly the same in your case as it did for somebody else. So,
right. Yeah, I mean, besides sort of the hard facts, like the companies may be different, what the product or the service may be different, individual relationships may be different, or the person that you're reaching out to, as I like to kind of, say, it's a Monday and they're not a Monday morning person, and you reach out to them on the Monday morning, like deaf ears, not going to happen.
And timing's a huge thing. And so timing's built into a number of the canvases as an explicit assumption to test. And in most of them, it's an implied one that obviously timing is going to be an issue. But the canvases basically look at what the critical assumptions are and the critical building blocks of building a strategy to build or strengthen a relationship with somebody. But yeah, timing is so important. You get the timing wrong, it doesn't matter what else you do. You could have everything else right. If timing is wrong, it's reasonable to think that the strategy is not going to work in the way that you expect it to.
Right, or might make the right strategy, but you haven't factored in this variable of this individual and what works for them. And I just have to say, I'm not going to pull the comment up because I know Molly will kill me, but I am like just indebted that our mutual contact friend Molly, who is on the West Coast and she is up and she is watching this. And thank you, Molly. You can see, you can hear and see we're cheering you on, and we are so appreciative. Now get your coffee, girl. Okay, 12 canvases.
Yes.
Count them down for me.
So the first one is about building and maintaining relationships. So it's essentially a strategy canvas for when you've identified who the key people are, or you think you know who they are, for testing the assumption and thinking, can you actually build a relationship with that person or those people?
Right.
The second one is a network map. So it's basically for mapping relationships, and it enables you to do two things. If there's somebody that you have an existing relationship with and you want to find more people that are like them, that have the same needs, see the same value, are within the same kind of social network or business network, you can map them. So you can actually see how you can extend your relationship easily from the existing people. The other way of looking at it is, if you want to build a relationship with somebody, you put them in the middle and then see who in your network has a relationship with them. And it's not necessarily about asking for an introduction. It's about learning the things that we were just talking about. Are they a morning person? How do they like to be kind of approached? Do they prefer email? Do they prefer telephone calls? All of those things. So the relationship mapping canvas is a second one. And really, there are 12 of those canvases, because depending on which canvas you're using, there's a relationship map that goes with each of those, with each of the other canvases. But we created a master one that has a selection of the relationships that you might need on it. And our customers actually build their own custom relationship map that, for a particular outcome, has maybe a network of journalists, a network of prospects, a network of existing customers. So you can build a custom relationship map that way. And the most important thing about that is about mapping the relationship strength and knowing where it is now and where it needs to be in order for you to get the outcome that you want. The third canvas is about marketing. It's about strategies for compelling relationships. And I always say that you have to have actionable relationships for that canvas to work. You have to have built relationships to a point where if you ask somebody to do something, they'll be willing to take the action.
So if you're building a house, like, don't start with the living room when you haven't built the basement yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like acknowledging that depending on what the ask is, the strength of the relationship needs to be different. And so if I always use the analogy, if I'm in Toronto and I forget my wallet and I need money to get a TTC ticket home, it's $3-4, I could pretty much ask 100 200 people, and they would give me the money and know that they were going to get it back and know that I was being honest, that I hadn't got my wallet. If I'm asking somebody for $500, there's still a reasonable number of people I could go to and ask them to loan me $500 for a few days. If I'm asking for $50,000, the network gets slightly smaller, and they've got to be people that have the money, whether they're willing to give me the money or not. If they don't have $50,000, they're useless to me for the purposes of actually getting somebody to give me $50,000. And so the relationship has to be actionable for the purposes that you want to use it. So having a lot of people that aren't able to take the action is useless. You need a few people that are actually willing and prepared to take it, that you have a relationship where if you ask them, they'll do it. And so that's the marketing strategy canvas, the marketing communication strategy canvas. There's a publicity canvas as well, which is about generating awareness. Now, in my industry, a lot of that is around media coverage, but awareness isn't just about media coverage. There are lots of other ways now with content to generate awareness. And so that canvas is about determining how best to generate awareness for the specific goal that you're looking to use it. And
Molly will love this, like issuing press releases and asking journalists to write up about you because you exist and somehow that makes you fascinating, is not really a journalist's job.
It's not, no, and people seem surprised when journalists kind of point that out, but it's about understanding how best to get awareness and if actually media is the best way to go.
Right. Just back in the day when we had slow, God bless, I look forward, when people want to return to normal, I want to return to the normal of slow news days.
Yep.
there was a journalist, was with a local TV station out in California, San Francisco based, and I was doing a media skills workshop with some friends of mine, and this local TV on-air journalist said on slow news days, she read blogs to find story ideas.
Yep.
So this is what you're talking about in terms of part of the publicity. Am I right?
Yes, but it's about understanding how best to do it. And so the next canvas is a media canvas, which is actually about exactly what you just talked about, was, looking for story ideas. How do you build a story? Who do you build it with? Which publications, which journalists? So that you're not just sending out a press release to, hundreds or some cases thousands, hoping that they'll want to write about it. And I always explain to people that people talk about the wire and they think it's a really easy way to kind of generate awareness or to distribute information. Most people don't understand really the value of wires and why they came about. And it was really about, from a regulatory perspective for publicly traded companies, so that if the SEC came to you and said, well, somebody was trading in your stock before you made a big announcement, you could actually demonstrate that the information was made generally available to people, via a certain time. It wasn't about disseminating information to journalists to write about it. It was really as a timestamp. But, my industry, again, doesn't generally tell people that that's really the purpose of it. And,
well, and the only time I've seen, I say a press release sort of a validity, like the usefulness of doing it, is if you can get it on a wire that has good SEO, and then someone searching for your company will find one. But you got to have, but that's, again, that goes back. Why don't you just put something? Why don't you have a blog and a website that has great SEO? And why aren't you continually putting out information so people think you're the expert? Okay, you got the media canvas, all right? Keep going.
And so then there's a news canvas as well. And so it's about making exactly what you were talking about, differentiating between something that's newsworthy and something that's just a story. It's interesting, but it's not necessarily news. And this is one of the things that I'm trying to help entrepreneurs to understand, is that in a newsroom, there are different journalists and they deal with different things. So the chat with Molly was about, the work that she does, that's kind of, but it's investigative and it's kind of looking for stories. It's not something that necessarily is newsworthy in that it has a time requirement now.
Right.
Some of the stuff that, gets written about will be newsworthy because it will be the first time people will hear about it. But actually the content and the research isn't newsworthy. It's not something that you have to write about the minute that you find out about it. And so understanding whether you have something that has news value or something that has value as a story, both have value to a startup or to a business, but it's understanding what you have so you talk to the right people. And one of those things is, go back to key relationships. Do you talk to journalists or do you talk to editors? Editors are kind of looking for story ideas. Journalists are looking for sources. Editors are looking for sources too that they can pass to the journalists when they assign stories, but actually understanding that if you contact a journalist while they're in the middle of writing something to deadline, they're not going to be that pleased to hear from you generally. Whereas assignment editors generally are always looking for story ideas. So as long as you're respectful of their time, you have something that is likely to be of interest to them, they'll listen to you. They might tell you that actually it's not relevant today because they don't have space or they have nobody to write it, or they don't, have any, they don't have stories that they would write about today in, whatever it is they're publishing. But assignment editors will generally listen to you. And so we developed a tool as well, which actually helps entrepreneurs map out the information that they have and whether they have everything they need to approach the journalist or editor that they're looking to kind of talk to get coverage for the story.
Well, that's how I got a byline in the New York Times. I pitched an editor and I got lucky because she needed a story.
But the value, this goes back to what Molly was talking about, was about the value often is in the source. It's kind of being able to call people and say, I've been asked to do something about this, 2 minutes of audio or 400 words, and I've got to do it in the next, 45 minutes. I don't understand this. Can you help me? And that's where you get, the real value in journalist relationships, because you can pitch them, but you don't know the other side, which is what they're working on. And so when they're working on something that's relevant to you, you want them to be able to call you up and say, can you help? And it might be that you can help directly. It might be that you can help indirectly, that you can connect them with somebody that actually is better placed than you are. Doesn't really matter, because if they're keeping calling you, there are going to be opportunities for you to benefit directly. And so it's, we want to try and help entrepreneurs to understand who they're talking to and where they need to be pitching story ideas and where they need to become a source, and where being a source is actually more value than annoying somebody by constantly phoning them, asking them to write about you.
So that you exist is not a story. I'll keep saying that one.
Nowadays, when we get post-COVID, maybe the fact that you do exist is a story. It depends on what industry.
But this whole idea of like, all right, one is relationship based, and I am so on this. It's like the long-term benefit of being on speed dial from a journalist's phone every time they have a story is like, and you got to own that. You can't think that somebody else is, they might need and it's not negotiable. It's not like, oh, gee, you're doing a story and what? Oh, that's nice. What about this? No. How do you help that person do their job with that particular story? So they call you again, and they call you again, and they call you again.
And one of the things that we say is that the two things that anybody being contacted by a journalist should ask is, what do you need and when do you need it by? Because they're the things really that journalists want to know. Can you help them? And also, can you help them in the context of their deadline? And if you say no, it's fine. They just won't expect to get anything from you, and they'll find somebody else. It doesn't mean they won't come back to you, but it's about understanding what they need and how you can help them. And also, if you say you can help them, following through on it, because if you don't, again, it'll be the last time they call you because they can't rely on you. And it's, it's understanding those things. They're the things that weaken relationships with journalists in the most cases, constantly pitching them stuff that isn't of interest to them, and also being unreliable, that when they come to you and say, can you help? And you say, oh, yes, but you don't ask them what their deadline is. So, you become unhelpful because you didn't get back to them quickly enough.
Right. Exactly. Well, this is why I'm saying, let's get back to the canvas. This is why it's so important to sort of like, what do you have to offer? What's the expertise? What is the story you want to tell? Because you may have, I've got expertise in commercial mortgage-backed securities. I don't want to talk about that. That's not the expertise I want to be found for in the media. All right.
There's a lot of opportunities for talking about that in the coming months, I would imagine.
I used to do Canadian bankruptcies. I did the Cadillac Fairview bankruptcy and their CCAA.
That's a prime example, though. If people start contacting you about that now, that's something you would have spoken about, before.
15 years ago.
Not now. So, you don't want calls from people asking you to talk about that now. And that's kind of typically what happens with journalists. Journalists are contacted about things they don't want to talk about.
Right. Well, it's like for the entrepreneurs, the small business owners, having the clarity of, okay, what do I want to be found on? And knowing that you have that value proposition, and then building the relationships so that, you're understanding the other person's job. So here, give me, I know what I can talk about. I know what you need. I know how your job works. I can help you. And exactly, as I've shared with Molly before, there was a journalist at Ad Age. He used to call me all the time, not necessarily because I could be the source, but he knew I would refer him on to somebody else. Okay, so we've got the canvases, we've got the building the network map, the marketing map, publicity, media, news. What else we got?
We have two that are brand. So one is brand strategy for building a brand, and one is brand strategy for communicating the brand that you've built. And so the two that work together, but they're for very different stages. And part of it is actually testing, if you want a business that's known for something, how do you build that brand? What do you need to do and what do you need to say? And the doing is really important, because it's easy to say that your brand is X or Y, but if you don't embody it, if you don't do what, the things that your audience expects to demonstrate that you stand for the things that you stand for, your brand perception is different from your brand reality. And so there's a canvas for helping businesses to do that, so that they can actually build it and test the assumptions. If I do this, does it actually strengthen people's perspective of my brand as X, or does it kind of reduce it, or does it weaken it? And so we built one for that, and also for communication about when you've built a brand and people know you for something, what do you communicate to them? What do they need to see as evidence, rather than just saying, well, this is my brand? You actually need to talk about things that reinforce that it's not just something that you put on a post-it note, when you were building the brand, and then forgot about it. That actually it's something that's embodied by the business in its operations day to day. So there are two brand canvases. The other
I always laugh when people, like individuals, say they're building their personal brand. I'm like, your personal brand is how you show up every day and what your network says about you. So if you want to build your personal brand, like, do that. It has nothing to do with your font and your color selection and whether you're the Pantone color of the year. Like, who cares?
Talking my language, yeah. And it's the other thing is, ask people. If you want to know what your brand is, ask people.
Right.
And if it's not what you want to hear, then figure out how you change it, and figure out how you change the way you communicate, or the things that you do that are reinforcing, the less positive elements of a brand.
Right.
And with that, we developed a tool as well for testing. So as well as the strategy development, strategy communication, we developed a test which enables businesses to actually do that check and say, what do you think my brand is? And if it isn't what you expect, understanding what you need to change in order to make it align with what you want people to believe it is, so that the two things match up. It's the same thing with the media canvases as well. We've developed toolkits that actually help, with being a source and also with pitching as well. So, but the brand is, kind of really important, because it's been such a hot topic recently, and most people's brands are not what they think it is. And repeatedly telling people that my brand is this, if it isn't, doesn't help change the brand to where you want it to be.
No. You gotta live it. It's what your brand is, what your audience tells you it is. Okay, so is that all the canvases? Is any we missed?
There are two more. One is an influencer and one is an investor. So again, different relationships. Influence is really about getting a third party to compel a marketing action. And so building a strategy requires a number of things. It requires the people that are being influential for you, or being influencers for you, to have influence over the people that you're asking them to compel to take an action. And so we build a canvas for that. And with investors as well, investors are a different animal. Again, they have different requirements. Your ask is financial. And so we wanted to split them out as a separate group, so that you're building investor relationships in a different way. They're marketing relationships to a point, but because they have specific requirements, in order to get them to take that action of investing money, and in some cases investing time, we wanted to kind of break it out as a separate canvas. It's also because it's a really hot topic, and people are spending a lot of time pitching anybody that has money, not realizing that actually it's not really going to increase their chances if they actually spent more time in figuring out what an investor wanted and who the most likely investors were in their business or in the problem they're trying to solve. Then they would have a lot more success. So that's why we developed the investor canvas as well.
Yeah, investors are not ATMs, kids.
No.
It's a relationship business. Yeah.
A lot of entrepreneurs are going to find that out where money was available before, relatively easily, certainly in Toronto, and it's not going to be as available. And so that relationship is going to be so important, even more so than it ever was.
Yeah, it was always the case that there may have been a lot of stupid money flying around there and all the rest of it. But my advice for entrepreneurs right now on the investor part is, like, work on all these other relationships, because if investors see a buzz about you, they're going to want to talk to you. Build your investor strategy on identifying the people you want to build relationships with, and plan on spending the next 12 to 18 months building relationships with them. I would have told you this before our current situation, but I think that's going to be vital right now, because everyone's sitting on their checkbooks.
Yep. And so it's we're going into a time that I don't know if any of us really understand what it's going to be like, but relationships are going to be so important. And the ones that you have now or that you can build in this hiatus is going to be so important. And the businesses that succeed are going to be the ones that have built those relationships ahead of time, because building them now when everybody's looking to build relationships with, the few investors that are still writing checks, customers have less money to spend, and so they're going to be more discerning about the products, the services that they buy. It's going to be so important.
Yeah, and as I always say, and you'll probably agree, you got to start with your core. Start with your core relationships and grow your network from there. And that doesn't matter if that's moving to a new community, building your brand, marketing, publicity. Start with the core and work out from there. Every once in a while, throwing a Hail Mary, wins a football game, but I say the quarterback's on the field with a team. So who's the team that's going to help you throw a Hail Mary?
It's called a Hail Mary for a reason. It's the last gasp chance because nothing else has worked, and yep. So it's funny having a considered, validated strategy helps you move down the field, to use the football analogy, far quicker than standing on the 10-yard line just throwing long passes and hoping somebody catches it, which is what a lot of businesses do, sadly.
Yeah, it's like, football's a good analogy for all of this. You know where you're headed. You know that's the goal you want to head towards. It takes a number of plays. It takes a team. You might have to switch up. You might have to call in special teams. You're going to fumble, but as long as you're headed in the right direction, you're not standing on a field by yourself just throwing a bunch of balls down the field hoping something works.
Well, the other thing as well as entrepreneurs, fumbles are just part of life. I mean, they're going to happen. If you deny that they're not going to happen, you're going to be, surprised and unpleasantly surprised when it happens. But the thing is about building relationship strength, we kind of find that people are forgiving. If it is a fumble, if it's something that you get wrong or that you misjudge, if you have a relationship, people will forgive it. Because it's something that happened, it's something you didn't know, it's something that just went wrong, or something that you didn't see. It's when it becomes, a regular occurrence that it starts to weaken relationship strength. But if you start with strong relationships, people know who you are, they know what you stand for, they know, the intention of the business. It gives you a lot more latitude for fumbling and recovering, and not, ending up too far back down the field.
That's awesome. The mic drop, the perfect moment. This has been phenomenal. I hope we can do this again, Lyndon, and have more of these chats. Where can people find these canvases? I will share the link out as well. I know you're going to tweet it out. I'll make sure it's in the show notes on YouTube. But where can they find the canvases, and how much do they cost?
So right now they're available via the link on the CommsBar website. If you go to the site, there's a link that says tools and resources. And when you click it, it drops down. Right now, there's 4 of them there. We've been just making some tweaks to them, and we're updating them and putting them back up there. So they'll be available from there over the next couple of days, and you'll have access to everything. Also, if there are incubators, accelerators, any organization that supports entrepreneurs, then we'll make them available to them directly so they can share them amongst their teams. The core canvases are actually Creative Commons, so there is no charge for them, and we wanted to make them available and accessible so that they can help as many entrepreneurs as possible. What we've done is we've developed some products around them that are focused on particular types of customer that will be paid for, but the core canvases are actually free.
There we go.
It's not about making money off of providing something which is really central to building businesses. And then obviously if entrepreneurs need help, then they can get advice from CommsBar specialists. But it's been designed that they do as much of the work themselves. We're talking about your example at the start about saving an entrepreneur from spending $125,000. We want to help entrepreneurs keep money in cash flow, in working capital, so that they have the money for doing things operationally that are going to move their business forward, rather than taking a whole load of money from them for things that they can do with the right guidance. It's really important. That was the reason the business started, was to help entrepreneurs to be able to use the core disciplines, the core skills. So if you want them, contact me, and I'm just Lyndon at comms.bar, and I can send you the canvases either directly or send you a link to download so they can be distributed to entrepreneur support groups around the world if there's demand for them.
Thank you. So I would say so generous with your time today, for making these resources available, and for, I want to say, living and breathing the ethos that you were telling these business owners, in the sense of what can you do for yourself, and then hire the person who is the specialist. I love that that's what CommsBar has. So that's comms, COMMS.BAR, CommsBar. Lyndon already gave you his email address, but do it one more time, Lyndon.
Yeah, it's just Lyndon, which is Lyndon. I'm fortunate to share the name with a president of the, fortunate or unfortunate, it gets remembered and I can say my name's the same as the president. But so it's just Lyndon at comms.bar, COMMS.BAR. But finding me online is quite difficult because the other Lyndon Johnson has libraries and space centers, and
he's got good publicity.
Yeah. But again, it's funny because when I talk about sharing the name, actually, it doesn't matter to me that people Google me and find me. It's about being known by the people that are most important to the business and helping me achieve the outcome, rather than being found by people randomly searching for Lyndon Johnson online. And so it kind of gives me the opportunity to demonstrate there's value in, kind of not necessarily being Googleable. It helps, but it's not critical.
So do more to stand out, and doing that little bit more makes it easier for other people to help you too. Lyndon, thank you so. I have to share this. Yes, a dead president has better SEO. There we go. Who would have thought? Molly, we start coffee. I know it. Lyndon, thank you, and let's do this again. The hamster wheels are already turning, and that's a dangerous thing. So thank you for joining me on this Monday morning, and thank you for everyone who has watched. And we'll head back over on Twitter and share some more links, and I'll get the links in YouTube as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kelly. Take care.
Thank you.